The clouds loomed dark and heavy over the small village of Apetu as rain began to fall in a slow, sorrowful rhythm like heaven itself was weeping. Each drop landed with a soft patter on the rusted zinc roof of a crumbling mud house at the edge of the village. Inside, a young woman knelt on a mat beside a frail boy whose breath came in shallow gasps. A joke, just 22 years old, wiped her brother's forehead with a rag dipped in lukewarm water. The water had once been hot, but there hadn't been firewood since yesterday. A joke, the boy moaned. It's hurting again. His face was soaked with sweat. His small hand clutched his stomach as another wave of pain twisted through him. Shh, I'm here, a joke whispered. Her voice trembled as she dipped the rag again. Just hold on, Deo, please. Deo was only 10. But his body was already showing signs of collapse. His skin was pale, lips cracked, and he hadn't eaten properly in 3 days. The nurse at the Apetu Health Center had examined him last week and given a grave diagnosis, a severe case of appendicitis, and it was worsening rapidly. The surgery, the nurse had said, would cost nearly $480,000. It might as well have been $48 million. A joke didn't have a kobo to her name. Since their mother died during childbirth 2 years ago and their father vanished without a word shortly after the burial, a joke had been left to raise her little brother alone. She became mother, sister, guardian, and provider all before her 21st birthday. She sold firewood, fetched water for people, and even washed clothes for market women, just to put a little Gary on the table. Yet despite all her efforts, here she was watching the only family she had left slowly die in pain she couldn't fix. She stared at the small metal cup on the floor. It held the last teaspoon of herbal mixture given to her by Mama Kudarat, the village's self-proclaimed healer. It hadn't helped. Nothing had. The rain outside got heavier. A joke looked around the one-room house. The walls were cracked. The floor was wet in patches, and the little cupboard in the corner was empty. She had sold her late mother's wrapper last week and her father's old radio the week before. She had nothing else to offer, nothing else to sell, except herself. The thought pierced through her like a blade. She shook her head violently and wiped her tears. There must be another way. By noon, the rain had turned into a storm, but a joke didn't care. Wearing her worn-out slippers and a faded wrapper tied over her chest, she made her way to the village palace, each step sinking into the red earth beneath her feet. She had never been inside the palace before. It was a place of pride, wealth, and tradition, the kind of place a girl like her never had business entering. But she had no choice. When she arrived, the palace guards eyed her suspiciously. One whispered something about her being the girl with the dying brother. After a long wait, she was led into a room with smooth white walls and a floor tiled in shiny marble far, different from anything she'd ever seen. On a carved wooden chair sat Baba Aro, the white-bearded village head known for his sternness and devotion to the old ways. She knelt before him. "Good afternoon, Baba," she said, her voice quivering. "I beg you, please help me. My brother, Deo, he needs surgery. The doctor said if he doesn't get it soon, he will die." Baba Aro squinted at her for a long time before leaning forward. "A joke," he said slowly. "You are known to be a good girl, hardworking, respectful. But you know this village. We don't have money just lying around. So let me ask you, are you truly willing to do anything to save your brother?" A joke looked up, tears brimming in her eyes. "Yes, Baba. Anything." He gave a small nod. "There is someone who can help," he said, stroking his beard. "But you must be willing to pay the price." She blinked. "What price?" He leaned in closer. "Chief Adagok." A joke's heart dropped. "Chief Adagok?" He nodded. "He's been watching you. He lost his last wife years ago. Now he wants another, and he's chosen you." A joke's breath caught in her throat. She had never spoken to Chief Adagok before, had barely even looked him in the eye. He was a man wrapped in mystery and fear. At 70 years old, with hair as white as snow and a beard like cotton wool, Chief Adagok was the wealthiest man in Ipetuan, the most feared. It was said that 5 of his wives had died. One went mad, another vanished. Some whispered he had powers. Others claimed he was a ritualist, but no one dared ask questions. Ajok's voice was barely audible. Why, me? Because you are desperate, Baba Aro said plainly, and he is rich. He can pay for your brother's treatment today. She trembled. But he's old. He could be my grandfather. Love has no age, Baba Aro said with a sly smile. But this is not love. This is sacrifice. Ajok rose to her feet slowly and left the palace in silence. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still gray, as if mourning with her. That night, she sat beside Deo, listening to his shallow breathing. He was getting worse. His legs trembled. His eyes were barely open. She wrapped her arms around him and rocked him gently, whispering songs their mother used to sing. At midnight, she whispered, I'll save you, Deo, even if it costs me everything. By morning, her mind was made up. The early morning sun cast a dim, hazy light over Ipetu village, as if even the skies knew something unnatural was about to happen. There was no rooster crowing, no motorbike revving in the distance, just silence and rumors. Ajok hadn't slept the night before. Her heart had been a storm. She kept watching her brother as he tossed and turned in pain, whispering her name every few minutes in his sleep. Her decision was made, but it did not sit well with her spirit. She felt as though she was walking herself into a fire and all she had to keep her from burning was hope. By 7 a.m., she was back at the palace. Baba Aro was expecting her. So, he said, adjusting his white agbada and looking at her with eyes that held neither judgment nor compassion. You've accepted? Ajok nodded slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes. Good, Baba Aro said, clapping once. The wedding will be tomorrow. Chief has sent word already. He is ready. Ajok blinked in confusion. Tomorrow? Yes, he has no time to waste. The preparations will be simple. Just the elders, the documents, and the bride. Don't worry. He has promised to pay for the surgery immediately after the wedding. Ajok opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her legs suddenly felt too weak to carry her. She turned and walked away quietly, numb to the stares from villagers who had already begun whispering. By afternoon, word had spread across Ipetu like dry harmattan fire. That poor girl Ajok is marrying Chief Adagok. Didn't his last wife disappear? She must be under a spell. Or maybe she's tired of poverty. Children pointed. Women sighed. Men shook their heads. But no one said anything to her directly. Not one person. That night, Ajok bathed with a bucket of cold water, scrubbing her body like it would remove the shame and fear she was about to carry. She combed her hair in silence, her eyes red, her reflection in the small cracked mirror looking like someone else, someone older, someone broken. She tied her mother's last wrapper tightly around her waist and laid down beside Deo, cradling him like a mother would a baby. I'm going to fix everything, she whispered into his hair. You'll be well. You'll go to school. You'll have a good life, even if I don't. The next day came like a thief. The wedding was quiet, too quiet. Ajok wore a simple white iro and buba borrowed from Mama Aduni. Her feet were bare. Her eyes, swollen from the night's tears, stared blankly ahead. There were no drums, no music, no dancing, just a cold wind and a few elders seated under the shade of a mango tree beside the palace. Chief Adagok arrived in a white Lexus Jeep. He stepped out slowly, his agbada snow-white, his red cap sitting royally on his gray hair. His beard was neatly trimmed, his hands covered in rings, and his face unreadable. He didn't smile, he didn't greet anyone. He simply walked up to where Ajoke stood and nodded. Baba Aro began the brief ceremony, his voice formal and ancient. Do you, Ajoke, daughter of late Mama Dupe, take Chief Atagoke as your husband, your lord, your protector, and your master in this life and the next? Ajoke swallowed hard. Her voice caught in her throat. She closed her eyes. I do. And you, Chief Atagoke, do you take this maiden to be your wife and keeper of your secrets? I do, the chief said, eyes fixed on her like he was looking through her soul. A few minutes later, they signed a paper. Baba Aro clapped once. It is done. There was no cheer, no ululation, no dancing women, just silence. Chief Atagoke turned to Baba Aro and handed him a brown envelope. This is 500,000, he said. Her brother is to be transported to Lagos today. I've already arranged for the surgery. Ajoke's eyes widened. For a brief moment, she forgot her fear. She wanted to fall to the ground in gratitude, but something about the chief's tone held her still. Instead, she said nothing, just nodded. Then, without another word, he led her to the back seat of the Jeep. They drove through the village, every head turned. Some with curiosity, some with envy, others with fear. They arrived at his mansion an hour later. Ajoke had never seen anything like it. It sat at the very edge of the village, past the farmlands, surrounded by towering trees. The gates were tall, black, and laced with iron spikes. The walls were painted blinding white, the compound wide enough to host a festival. She stepped out, feet trembling. There were no children running around, no relatives, no music, just silence. The main house had long corridors, polished tiled floors, and wide windows with thick curtains. It smelled of old wood, distant perfume, and something else she couldn't place, like burning incense mixed with the smell of old secrets. Follow me, the chief said. She obeyed, her hands clenched tightly. He took her to a rooma, large one, too large. A bed sat in the middle, made with white silk sheets. A mirror stood in the corner. The walls were bare. No photos, no memories. This will be your room, he said. Everything you need is here. Ajoke blinked. You won't stay? He looked at her for a long moment, then said, I do not touch what has not been tested. She frowned. What do you mean? You'll understand, he said, voice suddenly cold, on the 7th day. And with that, he turned and left. The door closed behind him with a heavy sound. Ajoke stood in the middle of the room, her heart pounding in her ears. For a man so rich, so powerful, and so feared, she had expected everything except this. The first night in the mansion was the longest night of Ajoke's life. She sat on the edge of the king-size bed in her room, her wrapper still tied around her chest, her legs pulled up like a frightened child. The air conditioning was on, yet her palms were damp with sweat. All around her, silence clung to the walls like dust. There were no night sounds, no crickets, no owls, no distant chatter from neighbors. It was unnatural. The silence was deliberate. She tried to sleep, but sleep refused her. Every creak in the floor, every rustle of the curtain made her jump. She was in a house far too big, married to a man she hardly knew, an old man known not for his kindness, but for the fear he inspired. Her thoughts drifted to Deo. Was he really in Lagos already? Had the surgery gone well? Would she even be allowed to visit him? She turned to her side and stared at the massive mirror across the room. Her reflection stared back, a small, frightened girl, pretending to be a woman. For a moment, she thought the image moved before she did, a slight shift in the eyes. She blinked. It was normal again. The next morning, a soft knock came at the door. Ajoke scrambled up, adjusting her wrapper. Yes? A young girl, not more than 18, entered. She had a scarf tied neatly around her head and carried a breakfast tray. Good morning, madam, she said quietly. My name is Zainab. I'll be taking care of you. A joke nodded slowly. Thank you. Zainab placed a tray on a small table. The food was rich golden, yam porridge, fried plantain, fresh pap in a ceramic cup. A joke's stomach rumbled, but she didn't touch it. Zainab, she said softly, do you live here? Zainab hesitated. Yes, madam. For 3 years now. A joke looked around the room, then back at her. Why is it so quiet? I haven't seen anyone else. Zainab lowered her eyes. There are others, but we don't leave our quarters without permission. A joke frowned. And the chief? Zainab's lips tightened. He prefers silence, especially from the wives. Wives? A joke echoed. Zainab nodded faintly, then quickly changed the subject. Do you need anything else? A joke wanted to ask more, but something in Zainab's posture said she had said too much already. She shook her head. Number, thank you. Zainab left quietly. A joke turned back to her food. Her appetite was gone. Later that afternoon, she decided to explore the house. Anything to distract her mind. The mansion had long hallways, polished marble floors, and thick ornate curtains that looked expensive enough to buy a plot of land. But there was something else, something off. She walked past a room filled with artifacts, ancient drums, carvings, dusty calabashes, and charms in glass cases. Another hallway led to a giant sitting room, where golden framed portraits hung on every wall. A joke moved slowly, staring at each one. Chief Adagoki younger, stronger, with sharp eyes stood in every picture, but beside him, different women. 5 of them. Each one beautifully dressed in traditional bridal attire, their faces frozen in happy smiles. The first woman had tribal marks, the second light-skinned and tall. The third wore beads that covered her chest. The fourth looked like a Hausa princess. The fifth wore the same kind of gilet a joke had worn yesterday. She felt something cold crawl up her spine. Then she saw it. The sixth frame, still wrapped in brown paper, leaning against the wall, unopened. A joke stepped closer and gently peeled the wrapper away. Her breath caught. It was her face. A portrait of her, already printed and framed. The wedding had only happened yesterday. She staggered back, heart thumping wildly. She hadn't posed for this. She hadn't been photographed. So how